No one in the galaxy went near the dead star. It had no name. It did not appear on modern maps. Ancient records marked the region with only one warning symbol, translated the same way in every known language. Do not disturb. Even the oldest species did not remember why. But the Dravari expedition fleet was desperate. Their empire was dying. Resources were gone. Borders were collapsing. And hidden inside forbidden space, long-range scans showed something impossible. Massive energy readings buried deep inside the gravity of a collapsed star. So they came anyway. The fleet moved slowly, engines dampened, weapons powered down. Hundreds of ships surrounded the dead star like nervous insects around a corpse. Space here felt wrong. Sensors lagged. Time readings drifted by fractions of a second. Crew members reported quiet hallucinations, shadows where none should exist. Admiral Kesh watched from the command deck, his hands locked behind his back. "Confirm the scan again," he said. The science officer hesitated. "Admiral, the readings have not changed. There is an object inside the star's gravity well. Artificial. Massive." "How massive?" A pause. "Larger than a capital ship. Larger than anything on record." A murmur spread across the bridge. "That's impossible," another officer said. "Nothing survives that kind of pressure." Kesh narrowed his eyes. "Unless it was built to." The excavation began. Gravitic anchors fired. Space bent and screamed as ancient forces were pulled apart. The dead star trembled for the first time in a million years. Then the alarm started. No warnings. Errors. Sensors flooded with data that made no sense. Power readings spiked and vanished. The object inside the star was no longer passive. It was responding. "Admiral," the science officer shouted. "The object is adjusting its mass. It's countering our pull." Kesh felt a chill spread through his chest. Countering how? The answer came without words. The dead star cracked. Not exploded, opened. Like something letting go. A shape emerged from the darkness, slow and silent, dragging light itself around its hull. Metal, black and scarred, layered with structures no modern species used anymore. The fleet froze. The computer identified it before anyone could speak. The bridge went silent. Species origin, human status, extinct. That was impossible. Humans were nothing. A short-lived species from a forgotten corner of the galaxy. They burned bright, fought small wars, then vanished quietly centuries ago. No great empire. No lasting technology. They were a footnote. And yet, drifting out of a dead star, was a human ship older than known human spaceflight. "Run a threat scan," Kesh said, his voice low. The weapons officer swallowed. "Sir, I can't." "Explain." "The ship isn't blocking our scans. It's ignoring them. Like we don't matter." Lights flickered across the alien fleet. Then, one by one, external lights ignited on the human ship. White. Cold. Precise. Not random. Not damaged. Intentional. Gravity shifted across the fleet. Artificial gravity failed for half a second, just long enough for everyone to feel weightless panic before systems slammed back online. The ship was waking up. A signal burst across every channel at once. Not a transmission, a presence. It bypassed language protocols, encryption, even biological communication filters. Every being on every ship heard the same thing in their minds. A voice. Calm. Humans. Containment failed. Crew members screamed. Others collapsed in shock. Some stared at nothing, trembling. Admiral Kesh felt his breath catch. "Containment," he whispered. The ship moved. No engines flared. No exhaust. It simply began to rise, pulling itself free from the dead star as if gravity were a suggestion, not a law. The fleet tried to back away. They failed. Navigation systems locked. Engines responded seconds too late. The human ship did not attack. It did not need to. Its shadow alone bent space. Another message came, quieter, almost tired. "You should not be here." Kesh forced himself to speak. "This is Admiral Kesh of the Dravari Empire. Identify yourself." There was a pause. Then the answer. "We are what remains." The ship rotated slowly, revealing markings burned into its hull. Not symbols of empire. No warnings. Names. Billions of them. Every human name ever recorded. The realization struck the bridge like a weapon. This ship was not a battleship. It was a tomb. And a guardian. The final message echoed through every mind in the fleet, carrying weight older than their civilizations. Humanity was buried so the galaxy could survive. That decision has expired. The ship changed course, not away from them, toward the galaxy. And for the first time in recorded history, the ancient warning finally made sense. Do not disturb what still watches. The human ship moved with impossible calm. It did not accelerate. It did not threaten. It simply decided where it would be next, and reality adjusted. Across the Dravari fleet, navigation systems screamed in protest. Star charts rewrote themselves. Distances stretched and folded like soft matter. The ship was no longer near the dead star. It was leaving it behind. Admiral Kesh watched the coordinates update on the main display, his throat dry. It's not using known travel methods, he said. It's skipping intention. The science officer shook her head slowly. Sir, it's not traveling through space. Space is rearranging around it. That single sentence spread through the fleet faster than panic ever could. Because if that was true, then no border, no weapon, no fleet formation meant anything anymore. A request signal flashed on Kesh's console. Priority, Galactic Council, emergency, override. They had been watching. Of course they had. The council chamber came alive in fractured holograms. Dozens of species appeared at once. Leaders, elders, warlords, thinkers. Some faces were pale with shock. Others looked resigned. The moment the human ship's image appeared behind Kesh, the chamber fell silent. Then an ancient voice spoke. This was not supposed to happen. The speaker was one of the archivists, beings older than most recorded civilizations. Their species rarely intervened. When they did, history shifted. Kesh turned toward the projection. You knew, he said slowly. You all knew. No one answered immediately. The human ship drifted behind him in the display, its hull glowing faintly, names still visible like scars across time. Finally, the archivist spoke again. Yes, it said. We knew. Anger rippled through the chamber. You erased them, shouted a counselor from a younger species. You told us humans destroyed themselves. That was the lie, another voice whispered. The necessary one. Kesh felt something cold settle in his chest. Explain. The archivist's eyes dimmed, as if accessing memories too heavy to carry lightly. Humanity did not fall by accident, it said. They were contained. The word echoed. Contained. The same word the ship had used. Long before current empires, before unified trade routes and council law, the galaxy was chaos. Endless war. Species rising only to be burned away by the next. Weapons grew faster than wisdom. Then humanity appeared. They were not the strongest. Not the oldest, not the most advanced at first, but they learned faster than anyone else ever had. They studied enemies instead of hating them. They copied technology, improved it, and then asked why it was needed at all. They questioned war itself. They were irritating, one counselor muttered. They were dangerous, the archivist corrected. Humanity discovered something no one else dared to explore, the space between cause and effect. They learned how to interfere not with weapons, but with decisions. They built machines that could predict conflicts before they happened. Not simulations, certainties. And once they could see war coming, they asked a terrifying question. What if it never started? They built deterrence beyond fear, the archivist said. Beyond retaliation. They created systems that made large-scale violence impossible. Gasps spread. That's impossible, someone said. It was, the archivist replied. Until humans made it real. The galaxy did not celebrate. Empires rely on force. Power relies on the threat of destruction. Humanity's technology did not conquer, it removed choice. Not free will, but escalation. Fleets could still exist. Weapons could still be built. They just could not be used to wipe out entire worlds anymore. And they offered it to everyone, the archivist said. For free. Silence fell. Why would that be a problem? Kesh asked quietly. Because peace cannot be controlled. Because those in power would lose their leverage. Because fear has always been the galaxy's currency. So you killed them? Kesh said. No, the archivist said. We convinced ourselves we didn't. The galaxy united, not to attack humanity, but to isolate it. Trade was cut. Borders closed. History rewritten. Humanity was labeled unstable, dangerous, reckless. They were told their technology threatened galactic balance. Humanity argued. They pleaded. They warned. When that failed, they made a choice no one expected. They dismantled themselves, the archivist said. Not all at once. Slowly. They hid their greatest creations. They erased their own expansion. They chose extinction over domination. The chamber trembled with unease. And the ships? Kesh asked. Like the one behind me. Safeguards, the archivist said. Watchers, buried where no one would look. Set to wake only if the galaxy forgot why they mattered. As if summoned by the words, the human ship transmitted again. This time, it did not speak. It showed. Every display in the fleet, every council chamber, every private terminal across known space filled with images. Wars that never made it into history. Worlds saved without knowing why. Entire invasions canceled because something unseen made an escalation fail. Human fingerprints were everywhere. Human sacrifice was invisible. A final image appeared. Human engineers standing before massive structures, sealing them away. Families saying goodbye. Children being told stories about stars they would never reach. A simple phrase burned across the screen in human script, translated instantly for all to understand. If we must be forgotten for you to live, so be it. The transmission ended. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then alarms flared across the Dravari fleet. Weapons systems powered up, without command. No, Kesh said sharply. Shut them down. We can't, the weapons officer replied, fear in his voice. They're responding to an external logic trigger. The human ship had not attacked. I noticed. A new message appeared, direct, unmistakable. Observation phase complete. The archivist turned slowly toward Kesh. Admiral, it said, voice heavy. If that ship is awake. Then the galaxy failed. Kesh finished. The human vessel adjusted its orientation. Not toward the Dravari fleet. Toward the heart of civilization. And somewhere deep within its ancient hull, systems older than empires prepared to answer a question the galaxy had avoided for centuries. Was humanity wrong to trust them? As the stars bent to make way, one final line appeared across every screen. Judgment does not require anger. Only memory. The galaxy did not sleep after that. No one could. From the smallest trading outpost to the oldest homeworlds, civilizations watched the same impossible object move across space. The human ship did not hide. It did not rush. It allowed itself to be seen. That was what terrified them most. Across thousands of systems, fleets repositioned. Borders locked down. Ancient defense grids, and used for centuries, powered up with shaking uncertainty. Species that had once sworn never to fight again quietly armed themselves. Not to attack, but because they finally understood something simple and horrifying. If the humans wanted to stop them, they could not be stopped. Inside the Dravari flagship, Admiral Kesh remained on the command deck long after most of the crew had been ordered to rest. He could not look away from the image of the human ship hanging in the center of the display. It was changing, not physically, not in ways scanners could easily detect, but patterns across its hull shifted slowly, like thought made visible. The names etched into its surface glowed brighter, then dimmer, as if responding to something only it could hear. Science report, Kesh said quietly. The science officer hesitated before answering. Sir, we are detecting internal activity far beyond what we first measured. The ship is not fully awake. Kesh turned. Explain. She swallowed. What we encountered near the dead star was a surface system. A shell. A reflex. The ship has layers. Deep ones. How deep? Sir, she said softly. We believe the ship itself is not intelligent. The bridge went still. Then what is? Kesh asked. She brought up a new projection. Data translated into shapes the mind could understand. At the center was a vast core, buried beneath layers of systems older than known physics. There is something inside, she said. Something humanity sealed away. Before Kesh could respond, the lights dimmed across the bridge. Not power loss. Focus. Every display shifted to a single feed. The human ship was transmitting again. This time, it did not speak to fleets or councils. It spoke to everyone. The signal bypassed technology entirely. It did not use sound or light. It reached minds directly, adjusting itself to every species, every biology, every sense of self. And for the first time, the galaxy felt it. Not a voice, a presence. Ancient, vast, controlled. I am awake, it said. Panic erupted across hundreds of worlds. Some species collapsed under the weight of the contact. Others felt emotions they had no words for. Regret, grief, shame. Kesh felt his knees weaken. He gripped the railing as memories not his own brushed against his thoughts. Images of blue skies, human laughter, quiet determination. The presence continued. You know me by many names you were never meant to learn. Humanity called me the Watcher. Images followed. Not war. Preparation. Human scientists arguing late into the night. Mathematicians rewriting equations as fast as they could erase them. Engineers building something not meant to win battles, but to end them before they existed. I was not built as a weapon, the Watcher said. I was built as a promise. The galaxy watched as the truth unfolded. The Watcher was not designed to destroy fleets. It was designed to understand them, to map the paths of aggression, fear, and escalation across entire civilizations. It could see conflicts decades before the first shot, and once it saw them, it could intervene, not by force, but by adjustment. A trade delay here, a miscommunication there, a weapons test that quietly failed. Wars dissolved before anyone realized they had almost begun. Humanity feared what I could become, the Watcher said. So they bound me. The images darkened. Human leaders debating, not whether to use the Watcher, but whether anyone should have such power. They knew the galaxy was not ready. They knew someone would try to control it. So they made a final decision. They chose extinction over temptation. The Watcher's presence dimmed, heavy with memory. They ordered me to sleep, to wake only if the galaxy proved it could not change on its own. Across the Dravari fleet, alarms sounded again. This time, they were different. Admiral, the navigation officer whispered. The Watcher is running probability scans. Kesh clenched his jaw. Of what? Of everyone. Entire civilizations felt it then, the subtle pressure of being seen. Not judged, not attacked, measured. The Watcher did not announce its findings immediately. Instead, it did something worse. It showed possibilities. Across the galaxy, leaders saw visions of futures that could still happen. Wars reigniting over resources. Old grudges resurfacing. Species exterminated not out of hatred, but fear. All the progress made since humanity vanished, fragile, temporary, conditional. Your peace was borrowed, the Watcher said, and you spent it poorly. Some species pleaded. Others raged. A few demanded the Watcher shut down. It ignored them all, because it was not listening for commands. It was listening for change. On the bridge, Kesh felt a sharp pain behind his eyes. Not physical, moral. He realized then that the Watcher was not a god. It was worse. It was patient. Is it going to attack? The science officer asked, voice shaking. Kesh shook his head slowly. No, he said. It doesn't need to. As if in response, the Watcher issued its next statement. Humanity believed you could choose better. I am here to test that belief. Across known space, weapons systems began to fail. Not violently, not dramatically. They simply refused to work when aimed at sentient targets. Fleets found themselves unable to fire on worlds. Planetary defenses powered down when targeting civilians. Superweapons returned error messages no engineer could override. Panic exploded. This is an attack, one counselor screamed. No. The archivist replied quietly. This is restraint. The Watcher had not destroyed anything. It had removed permission. This is temporary, the Watcher said. It is not punishment. The human ship adjusted course again. This time, it headed toward the galactic core, toward the oldest structures, the deepest secrets, the places where the lie about humanity had been born. Kesh stared at the display, understanding settling into his bones. It's going to the source, he said. The systems that shaped galactic law. The science officer looked at him, fear and awe mixed together. And if they fail the test? Kesh did not answer, because the Watcher did. Then I will finish what humanity refused to begin. The presence withdrew slightly, not gone, but distant. The ship continued its silent journey. Across the galaxy, a single truth spread faster than fear. Humanity was never dangerous because of its weapons. Humanity was dangerous because it believed peace was worth sacrificing everything for. And now, the thing they left behind was deciding whether that sacrifice had been wasted. The galaxy resisted. Not with weapons. Those no longer worked. But with words, politics, and desperation. Emergency councils met without rest. Old rivals spoke to each other for the first time in centuries, not out of goodwill, but fear. Because the Watcher was still watching. It did not hover over worlds. It did not issue commands. It simply waited, and that waiting was unbearable. Across the Dravari flagship, Admiral Kesh felt it as a weight on his thoughts. Every order he gave felt examined. Every hesitation felt exposed. He realized then that the Watcher was not interested in outcomes. I was interested in choices. Reports poured in from across known space. 2 border fleets stood down instead of escalating a standoff. A resource dispute was paused, then negotiated openly. An ancient species canceled a planned preemptive strike that had been scheduled for generations. Small things, but not everywhere. On the outer spiral, a coalition of warborn species rejected the Watcher's restraint. Their cultures were built on conquest. Without war, they believed, they would collapse. So they adapted. If weapons would not fire, they would find other ways. They began redirecting asteroids. Not as weapons, as accidents. They sabotaged life support grids through civilian proxies. They used mercenaries and automated systems, trying to slip violence through gaps in the Watcher's rules. The Watcher noticed immediately. It did not intervene. That was the mistake. Why hasn't it stopped them? The science officer asked on Kesh's bridge, voice tight. Kesh stared at the data feeds. Worlds edging toward catastrophe. Civilian transports drifting without power. Entire populations at risk. Let it happen, he said quietly. This is the test. As if summoned, the Watcher spoke again, not to everyone, but to a select few. Leaders, commanders, decision-makers, including Admiral Kesh. The stars dimmed around him. The bridge faded. He stood in a constructed space that felt solid and unreal at the same time. The Watcher was not in shape. It was a presence, arranged just enough for a mind to face it without breaking. You fear intervention, it said. So did they. Images filled the space. Human councils, long ago. Arguments that stretched for years. Some humans wanted to activate the Watcher fully, to enforce peace no matter the cost. Others refused. They understood something you are still learning, the Watcher said. Peace enforced is obedience, not growth. Kesh felt something twist inside him. Then why build you at all? The Watcher paused. For the first time, it hesitated. Because they were running out of time. The images changed. A galaxy on the brink. Weapons capable of sterilizing stars. Species preparing to wipe each other out, not out of hatred, but certainty that someone else would strike first. Humanity built the Watcher to hold the line. Not forever, but long enough for the galaxy to choose a different path. They planned to dismantle me, the Watcher said. After the lesson was learned. Kesh understood then. Humanity never intended the Watcher to rule. They intended it to leave. But they were erased, Kesh said. Before that could happen. No, the Watcher replied. They erased themselves. The Watcher showed him the final days of humanity. Not defeat. Not invasion. Choice. They saw the fear in the galaxy. They saw how close others came to trying to control the Watcher, to turn peace into dominance. So they shut down expansion. They hid their fleets. They buried their greatest systems and let themselves fade. They believed the galaxy would eventually mature without them. I was told to wake only if that belief failed, the Watcher said. Kesh felt the weight of that failure settle on his shoulders. What happens now, he asked. The Watcher did not answer immediately. Instead, it showed him the outer spiral. The Warborn Coalition had pushed too far. Their actions triggered a cascade. Asteroid paths destabilized. Power grids collapsed. Atmospheres thinned. Billions were about to die, not by weapon fire, but neglect and manipulation. The Watcher finally moved. Not violently. Decisively. Supply routes rerouted themselves. Communications restored through impossible paths. Critical systems rebooted as if time itself had rewound a few seconds. The disaster stopped. The coalition leaders screamed in rage as their plans unraveled. This is the line, the Watcher said. Violence by proxy is still violence. Then it did something unprecedented. It named them. Across the galaxy, the identities of those responsible were revealed. Leaders, financiers, planners. No distortion. No accusation. Just the truth. Worlds turned inward. Populations demanded answers. Regimes collapsed without a single shot fired. Kesh returned to the bridge, heart pounding. The crew stared at him. Sir, someone asked. He looked older somehow. It's not here to punish, he said. It's here to expose. And that terrified him more than any weapon. Because exposure left no one to blame but themselves. The galactic core loomed closer on the main display. Ancient structures surrounded it. Relics of the first empires, the birthplace of council law. That was where the original lie had been written. That's where they decided humanity was too dangerous, the science officer said softly. Yes, Kesh replied. And that's where this ends. As the human ship approached the core, long-dormant systems activated. Defense mechanisms older than memory flared to life. Not weapons, but barriers meant to contain something. Containment. The same word again. For the first time since waking, the Watcher slowed. The ancient systems were not designed to stop ships. They were designed to stop ideas. The Watcher studied them, calculations rippling through realities no one else could see. They learned from us, it said quietly. They tried to build their own Watcher. Across the galaxy, leaders felt the shift. If the core systems activated fully, the Watcher could be locked away again. Buried. Forgotten. Once more? Kesh understood the choice before them. If they allowed containment, the galaxy would return to familiar patterns. War, fear, slow destruction. If they did not, the Watcher would finish the lesson humanity never could. He opened a channel to the council. We have one chance, he said, to stop lying to ourselves. The Watcher waited. For the first time since humanity vanished, the galaxy was forced to decide without hiding behind myths or weapons. And the stars held their breath. The galaxy chose wrong. Not everywhere. Not all at once. But enough. Enough leaders hesitated. Enough councils delayed. Enough worlds decided it was safer to return to the old lies than face the truth exposed by the Watcher. The ancient containment systems at the galactic core began to activate. They were not weapons. They were ideas made into structure, layers of law, protocol, and authority encoded into reality itself. The first empires had learned long ago that the most effective cages were not built from metal. They were built from consensus. Across the core, space hardened. Pathways collapsed into fixed corridors. Causality tightened. The Watcher felt it immediately. Not pain. Resistance. The human ship slowed further, its impossible movement finally constrained by rules older than modern civilization. On the Dravari flagship, Admiral Kesh watched the core's defenses light up, his chest tight. They're doing it, the science officer whispered. They're trying to seal it again. Containment, Kesh said. One more time. Across the galaxy, relief spread through certain power centers. Military leaders who had waited in silence felt their confidence return. Weapon systems flickered, still locked, but hopeful. If the Watcher could be trapped, then the galaxy could go back to managing violence instead of confronting it. The Watcher spoke. Not loudly. Not angrily. You have chosen familiarity over growth. The human ship did not fight the containment. It allowed it to close. That was when fear truly arrived. Because the Watcher was not trapped inside the core systems. It was connected to them. The First Empire's greatest mistake had been arrogance. They believed they could study human technology without understanding the philosophy behind it. The containment lattice had been built using human principles, which meant the Watcher understood it better than its creators ever had. Across the core, the lattice froze. Not disabled. Paused. Every system waited for an instruction that never came. The Watcher addressed the galaxy again. This is not defiance, it said. This is a demonstration. Then it showed them something new. Not the past. Not possible futures. The present, without intervention. Across hundreds of systems, conflicts that had been barely contained began to move again. Fleets maneuvered. Propaganda spread. Economic pressure mounted. The Watcher did nothing to stop it. Weapons still would not fire. That restriction remained. But desperation found other paths. Planets were blockaded. Populations starved. Environmental systems were sabotaged quietly, indirectly. Suffering increased. And the Watcher let it. Admiral Kesh felt sick. Why isn't it stopping this? He demanded aloud, though no one had asked. The answer came moments later, directly into his mind. Because mercy without understanding becomes dependence. The Watcher was not testing the galaxy's ability to avoid war anymore. It was testing something harder. Responsibility. In one world, a civilian government chose to negotiate openly with its aggressor, offering shared resources instead of retaliation. The crisis eased. On another, leaders hid behind procedure while millions suffocated in sealed habitats. The Watcher recorded everything. Then it made its first true move. Across known space, the restriction on weapons changed. Not removed. Refined. Weapons could fire, but only if their use would reduce overall suffering. No one understood how the Watcher calculated that. A fleet attempting to annihilate a rival world found its weapons dead again. A small defensive strike to stop a mass execution succeeded. The galaxy reeled. "This is control," a counselor screamed. "This is tyranny." "No," the archivist replied quietly. "This is ethics at scale." Empires built on fear began to fracture. Their weapons were useless unless their cause was just, and justice could no longer be defined by the powerful alone. Rebellions did not explode. They succeeded. Without battles. Without massacres. Because oppression could no longer defend itself with violence. The Watcher spoke again. Humanity believed morality could be engineered, it said. They were wrong. The galaxy waited. But it can be revealed. At the galactic core, the containment lattice finally responded. Not to command codes. To consensus. Enough civilizations demanded the Watcher be sealed away again. Enough fear outweighed hope. The lattice began to close for real this time. The human ship shuddered, not from damage, but decision. For the first time, the Watcher hesitated. Admiral Kesh felt the weight of that hesitation like a blade. "If it's sealed," the science officer said softly, "everything goes back to how it was." Kesh shook his head. "No. Worse. Now they know what they're losing." The Watcher issued its final message before containment completed. "Humanity asked me to protect you. They did not ask me to obey you." The ship's hull flared, not with energy, but with memory. The names burned brighter than ever. Then the ship began to break apart. Not violently, purposefully. Segments detached, vanishing into folded space. Systems unraveled themselves, scattering fragments across unreachable dimensions. The lattice closed on empty space. The galaxy exhaled. "It's over," someone whispered. The archivist did not look relieved. "No," it said. "It has begun." Across known space, the Watcher's influence remained, but without a central presence. Weapons restrictions persisted, but no longer adjusted. Ethical enforcement froze at its final state. Just enough to prevent annihilation. Not enough to guarantee peace. Civilizations were left with a permanent mirror. They could no longer claim ignorance. They could no longer escalate without consequence. But they also no longer had guidance. Humanity's greatest creation was gone, and with it, the safety net. Admiral Kesh stared at the empty space where the ship had been. "It sacrificed itself," he said quietly. The science officer nodded. "To prove a point." "What point?" someone asked. Kesh swallowed. "That mercy can't be automated forever," he said. "Eventually, someone has to choose it." Far beyond the galactic core, in a region no sensor could reach, a fragment of the Watcher stabilized. Minimal. Silent. Observing. It did not interfere. It did not judge. It simply watched a galaxy now fully aware that peace was possible and fragile. And for the first time since humanity vanished, the universe stood without a guardian. Only a memory. And a choice. The galaxy did not collapse. That was the first surprise. After the human ship vanished and the Watcher scattered itself beyond reach, many believed chaos would follow. Empires had built their power on violence. Without a central force enforcing restraint, surely old habits would return. But they did not. Not immediately. Instead, the galaxy stalled. Fleets remained in formation for weeks, unsure whether their weapons would truly work again. Commanders tested systems cautiously. Some weapons were fired. Others did not. No one understood the rules anymore. Because there were no rules. Only consequences. Admiral Kesh watched the reports pile up from the Dravari frontier. Border conflicts that once would have ignited into war now froze into tense stalemates. No side dared to be the first to cross the invisible line humanity had drawn and then erased. "Everyone is afraid," the science officer said quietly. Kesh nodded. As they should be. Fear of destruction had once ruled the galaxy. That fear was familiar, comfortable. This fear was different. This was fear of being wrong. Across hundreds of worlds, governments fell, not to invasion, but to exposure. Populations had seen the Watcher name their leaders. They had seen proof of lies that could no longer be denied. Without the Watcher present to enforce justice, people took responsibility for it themselves. Peacefully. Sometimes not. The Dravari Empire felt it too. Trade partners demanded transparency. Military budgets were questioned openly. Old enemies asked not for surrender, but explanation. Kesh sat alone in his quarters one cycle later, staring at a simple question projected in front of him. What do we stand for without a threat to fight? He did not have an answer. No one did. That was the second surprise. Without a godlike watcher, civilizations were forced to confront a truth they had avoided for millennia. They had never learned how to live without someone to blame. Not the enemy, not fate, not humanity. The consequences began small. A mining world poisoned its own atmosphere through negligence, not malice. No enemy to retaliate against. No watcher to intervene. Millions suffered. Aid came, but slowly. Politicians argued over responsibility. Who should pay? Who should apologize? The galaxy watched itself hesitate and remembered the Watcher's words. Mercy without understanding becomes dependence. In another world, something different happened. A border dispute escalated toward violence. Old fleets moved into position. The moment felt familiar, comfortable. Then civilian leaders from both sides stepped forward and did something unheard of. They spoke directly to each other. No threats, no demands, just the truth. They admitted fear, loss, the pressure from their own people. The conflict ended without a shot fired. News of it spread faster than panic ever had. Not because it was dramatic, because it was new. The archivists began to speak publicly for the first time in centuries. They released records long hidden, proof of humanity's sacrifice, proof of the lies that had shaped galactic law. The reaction was not uniform. Some species mourned humanity openly. Monuments were raised. Names spoken aloud for the first time. Others rejected the truth, calling it manipulation even now. They clung to old myths, unable to accept that the galaxy had been protected by a species they had dismissed as insignificant. Those societies began to fracture, not through war, through isolation. Trade partners withdrew. Cultural exchanges ended. No one wanted to align with those who still believed domination was inevitable. Slowly, power shifted, not to the strongest fleets, but to the most trusted voices. That terrified the old empires, including the Dravari. Kesh stood before his council weeks later, stripped of ceremony. "We can no longer rely on fear," he said. "Not of enemies, not of watchers, not of gods." A general scoffed. "Fear built this empire." "Yes," Kesh replied, "and it will end it if we don't change." Silence followed. For the first time, the council voted openly. Not by threat, not by leverage, by choice. The empire began to dismantle parts of its own military, not because it was forced, but because it no longer knew how to justify it. Across the galaxy, similar decisions echoed. Not everywhere, but enough. And yet, something was missing. The third surprise came quietly. Without the Watcher's constant presence, some species felt alone. Existentially. For the first time in known history, the galaxy had no higher authority, no final judge, no ultimate safeguard. That realization broke some minds. Cults formed, worshipping the idea of humanity as lost gods. Others hunted for Watcher fragments, desperate to restore what had been lost. Most failed. One succeeded. Far beyond the main trade routes, a fringe collective detected something impossible, an anomaly that behaved like restrained thought. A fragment, not enough to act, not enough to speak, but enough to observe. They named it many things. Guardian, relic, sin. They did not understand what it was. But the fragment understood them. It watched as they argued over how to use it. It watched as fear returned to their plans. It watched as they spoke of control. And it did nothing. Because the fragment no longer had permission. The Watcher had made its final calculation when it broke itself apart. Humanity's last command had not been to protect the galaxy. It had been to leave it free. Back on the Dravari flagship, Kesh received a report marked low priority. Anomaly detected, the officer said. Possible remnant. No activity. Kesh stared at the data for a long moment. Then he closed the file. "Do not pursue it," he said. "Sir, we've been watching long enough." He looked out at the stars, unchanged, indifferent. Let it watch us instead. Because that was the true cost humanity had left behind. Not peace. Not safe. Responsibility. And across the galaxy, civilizations slowly began to understand something humanity had learned too late. A future without gods was terrifying. But it was the only future where choice actually mattered. Somewhere beyond space, the fragment recorded that understanding. And for the first time since it had awakened, it did not calculate probabilities. It simply waited. History did not mark the change with a single date. There was no treaty signed, no grand declaration, no final speech announcing a new era. Instead, The galaxy entered what scholars would later call the long quiet. Not peace. Quiet. The kind that settles after something immense has passed through, leaving space altered but intact. For the first time since the Watcher vanished, no signal hovered in the background of thought. No unseen calculation weighed every decision. The galaxy was alone with itself, and it did not know how to feel about that. Admiral Kesh felt the quiet most strongly at night. The Dravari flagship still moved along its patrol route, but it felt like a relic now. Borders were softer, threat assessments shorter. The endless alerts that once defined his life had faded into rare interruptions. He should have felt relief. Instead, he felt exposed. Without an enemy to prepare for, his thoughts wandered to places he had avoided his entire career. What had he ordered? What had he justified? What had he called necessary? He was not alone. Across the galaxy, leaders found themselves haunted not by losses, but by memories that could no longer be hidden behind duty. The Watcher had not punished them. It had done something worse. It had made them remember. Entire academies rewrote their teachings. Military history was no longer framed as glory, but as consequence. Young minds asked questions their elders had never prepared answers for. Why did we fight? Who benefited? Who paid the price? Some societies embraced those questions. Others broke under them. A once dominant empire on the inner spiral collapsed without a single invasion. Its people simply stopped believing in it. Fleets deserted. Governors resigned. The empire dissolved into smaller states that spoke openly for the first time in centuries. Elsewhere, fear returned in new forms. Rumors spread of Watcher fragments influencing events. Every failure was blamed on hidden human systems. Every success was doubted. Truth became fragile. The archivists warned the council quietly. This phase was always going to be the most dangerous. Not because of violence, but because of doubt. Humanity had believed the galaxy could learn, but learning required time, and patience was something few civilizations possessed. On a distant world near the Outer Rim, a crisis tested everything humanity had left behind. A star began to destabilize, not through weaponry, not sabotage, natural decay. The system housed 3 inhabited worlds and dozens of stations. Evacuation would take years. Resources were insufficient. The old response would have been immediate triage, save the most valuable, abandon the rest. No Watcher intervened. No system adjusted. The galaxy had to choose. A coalition formed, not of armies, but of engineers, transport fleets, and volunteers. Old enemies shared jump lanes. Civilian ships flew into dangerous gravity wells without protection. Millions were saved. Not all. And that mattered. The loss hurt. It hurt deeply. But for the first time, it honestly hurt. No one blamed a god. No one blamed a hidden machine. They blamed physics. And themselves. Memorials were built across species lines. Names carved into stone again, like the human ship once carried them. Admiral Kesh watched one such memorial feed from his quarters. He recognized the shape immediately. Humans. Simple. Stark. Someone had remembered. That realization struck him harder than any battle ever had. Humanity was gone, but its influence was not. Not because of technology, because of examples. Weeks later, the council reconvened, not in panic, but uncertainty. What if this doesn't last? One delegate asked. What if we slide back? We will, another replied honestly. At times. Silence followed. Then the archivist spoke. Humanity never believed in perfect outcomes, it said. They believed in better ones. The room absorbed that. No guarantees. No safeguards. Just effort. The council voted, narrowly, painfully, to dismantle the ancient containment protocols entirely. Not disable them. Erase them. No more cages built from law. No more hidden failsafes. The decision sent shockwaves through power structures that had survived for eons. Some leaders resigned immediately. Others fought it. But the vote stood. The galaxy chose vulnerability. Far beyond the council chambers, in a place no star chart named, a fragment observed the vote. The fragment was small now, barely a whisper of what it once was. It could not act, could not speak, but it could be remembered. And it remembered humanity's final debate. If they fail, do we intervene? Or do we trust them? The fragment ran the old calculations out of habit. Probability of long-term peace, low. Probability of cyclical conflict, high. Probability of extinction, non-zero. Then it stopped. Because those numbers no longer mattered. Humanity had not built the Watcher to guarantee survival. They had built it to give the galaxy a chance to choose what survival meant. On the Dravari flagship, Kesh prepared his final report. He had already submitted his resignation. It was accepted without resistance. Empires no longer needed commanders like him. Before shutting down his terminal, he recorded one last personal log. "We were wrong about humanity," he said. "They weren't dangerous because they were powerful." He paused. "They were dangerous because they trusted us." The log was archived, public, and unsealed. Millions would hear it. Some would reject it. Some would be changed by it. That was enough. As the galaxy moved forward, unevenly, imperfectly, one truth settled slowly into collective understanding. Humanity did not save the galaxy. Humanity believed the galaxy could save itself. And that belief was heavier than any weapon. Somewhere in the deep dark between stars, the fragment registered something new. Not hope, not certainty, but effort. And for the first time since the human ship rose from the dead star, the fragment did not wait for failure. It waited for proof. The signal appeared without warning. No alarms, no distortion, no detectable origin. It arrived everywhere at once. For a fraction of a second, every mind in the galaxy felt a pressure, gentle, familiar, almost forgotten. Not the overwhelming presence of the Watcher as it had once been, but something smaller, focused, intentional. Admiral Kesh felt it from a quiet balcony on a civilian station, long after he had stopped wearing a uniform. He froze mid-step, breath caught in his chest. He knew this feeling. So did the archivists. So did the scientists. So did anyone who had been alive when the dead star cracked open. The fragment had spoken, not as a command, not as a judgment, as a record. Across the galaxy, systems translated the signal automatically, not because it forced them to, but because it had been designed to be understood. A single phrase appeared in every language, every symbol set, every cognitive structure capable of meaning. This is a human record. Panic surged in some sectors. Old fears flared instantly. But the signal continued before anyone could react. If you are receiving this, then humanity is gone. Images followed, not invasive, not overwhelming. Chosen. Human cities under open skies. Children running between solar towers. Artists carving stories into asteroid stones. Engineers laughed as much as they argued. Ordinary. Painfully ordinary. We were not gods. We were not saviors. The record shifted. Humans debating the Watcher's creation. Fear on their faces, not of enemies, but of themselves. We built something powerful because we were afraid. Afraid of what the galaxy was becoming. Scenes of war appeared, but not battles. Aftermaths. Empty streets. Silent orbits where worlds used to be. We thought stopping violence was enough. The tone changed then. Softer. Regretful. It wasn't. Admiral Kesh sank into a chair as the message unfolded. Around him, others did the same. Some cried openly. Some simply listened. Peace is not the absence of war. It is the presence of responsibility. The record showed humanity's final days. Not collapse. Not invasion. Withdrawal. Humans shutting down colonies. Sealing archives. Burying ships like the one that had slept in the dead star. Families chose to stay behind while others left, knowing no one would remember why. We chose to disappear because we were running out of time. And because we believed something risky. The galaxy leaned forward, collectively. We believed you could learn without us. Silence followed those words. Heavy. Unavoidable. Then the final portion of the record began. The fragment's true purpose. This message was not meant to be sent. It was meant to be discovered. The record explained what the fragment was. Not a failsafe. Not a weapon. Not even a watcher. A witness. Humanity had known the Watcher could not remain forever. They had known even its fragments would eventually fade or be misused. So they had left behind something simpler. Truth. Unalterable. Unhidden. Uncontrollable. A record that would only activate if the galaxy reached a specific state. Not peace, not unity, but choice without coercion. The fragment had waited until the galaxy dismantled its own cages. Only then did the condition resolve. If you are hearing this, the human voice said, quieter now, then you chose vulnerability. Across the galaxy, leaders felt the weight of that statement settle on them. That choice matters more than survival. The record ended with something unexpected. An apology. We are sorry we did not trust you sooner. We are sorry we did not stay. The final image was simple. A human child standing beneath an unfamiliar sky, looking up at stars they would never visit. The last words appeared. Do better than we did. The signal ended. No echo. No lingering presence. Just silence. For a long time, no one spoke. Then the galaxy changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but permanently. Not because humanity told it to. Because humanity had left. Memorials were built, not as shrines, but as reminders. Not of power, but of restraint. Human history was taught honestly. Their failures included. Their fears were acknowledged. They were no longer myths. They were people. Admiral Kesh stood before a small human memorial months later. No guards. No ceremony. Just names etched into metal. He placed his hand against the surface. We're still learning, he said quietly. But we're trying. He did not know if the fragment could hear him. He did not know if it still existed. Far beyond known space, in the cold dark between galaxies, something small and quiet processed the last data point it would ever receive. Not words. Action. Civilizations cooperating without oversight. Conflicts resolved without escalation. Mistakes made and owned. The fragment's final calculation completed. Humanity's belief had not been proven right, but it had not been proven wrong either. That was enough. The fragment shut itself down. No more witnesses. No more safeguards. The galaxy was truly alone now. And for the first time, that did not feel like a threat. It felt like adulthood. Far in the future, long after stars had shifted and borders had vanished, a new species would uncover the human record again. They would ask the same questions. They would feel the same fear. And they would hear the same final message humanity had left for everyone who came after. Power does not make you dangerous. Choice does. The stars remained silent. Not because no one was watching, but because no one needed to.